Would you be opposed to removing one nation under God from the Pledge of Allegiance, and why or why not? One nation under God wasn't added to the pledge until 1954. So yeah, it can be removed, and should be. Yeah, it was put in as part of the peak of the anti-commie fad. Apparently, they thought communists would recoil in fear like vampires at mention of God. I dislike that they inserted it into the middle of what was one country indivisible, thus symbolically dividing the country by interjecting their personal religious preference. Darn, that's deep. I'm going to have to remember that the next time I argue about it. One nation, under Canada, above Mexico. Robin Williams. Further proof that that man was too good for this world. Man, he would have had an absolute field day the past 67 years. So would George Carlin. Man, I miss both of them. Canada, pretty sure that's the same. Mexico, what's that make us? Canada, well, it's pretty hot down there. Mexico, F you. Mexico, F you Shorsey. I'm okay with removing the Pledge of Allegiance altogether. It's creepy and cultish. Your Honor, I pledged allegiance to the flag. Everything else was fair game. You also pledged allegiance to the republic for which it stands, though. Nope, I pledged allegiance to the republic for which it stands. I'm Christian, but it needs to be removed from all public buildings, and our money. All are tantamount to government establishment of religion, and violate the First Amendment. The pledge, though, is an abomination and should be entirely removed. Our country fought for its independence to be able to be free of pledges of fealty and forced recitation, assuming that gets douchebags like Kim Jong-un hard. Seeing your comment got me thinking about the Christian perspective on this, and I have to think that money is one of the last things Jesus would want to be associated with. We live in the South, so even though we don't go to church, my daughter picks up religious things here and there. A few weeks ago I was telling her about Jesus turning over the money changers' tables at the temple, and then read to her the whole passage where he rails on the Pharisees, and we talked about how much Jesus would dislike American Christianity. Hi, do you mind if I ask what you think most Americans mean by the South? Perhaps a silly question, but I am a Canadian, I grew up near Toronto, who lives in Europe. I guess I have never really been clear where the South begins though. Is there an agreed list of states? For example, my guess is the Southeast, on my experience visiting Arizona, and that I have never heard a Texan say they were from the South. Perhaps some do though. I have only met Texans from the major cities, so simming like Louisiana, up to Arkansas, and then east to include North Carolina. Is that correct? Or totally wrong? Sorry, Virginia feels southern to me too, but I don't know. I have been to the US many times and it is a beautiful country, by the way. Thank you so much if you are willing to explain. Edit, fixed my formatting errors. Edit 2, thank you everyone for informative responses. I appreciate everyone's time and perspectives. It was inserted by Congress in the early 50s as a reaction to the Red Scare, and even though the original pledge has socialistic origins, I'm not a fan of pledging loyalty to a government. Loyalty to governments can be earned and lost. Interestingly, plenty of countries had these pledges in World War II, only the USA kept theirs after the end of the war. Yeah, my French wife thinks it's really creepy that such young kids say it in a monotone hypnotic voice daily. I never thought about it until she mentioned it. It was just something we did. It's well known the pledge has an expiration after 24 hours, so if they don't say it daily, it doesn't count. The fact you have a pledge at all is weird. Sincerely, the rest of the world. In Texas the kids have the American pledge and the pledge to Texas, which is wild to me. First of all, a pledge in school is just ridiculous. Then, you have a pledge to your country and the state you live in? So which is it, your state or country? Which is more important? The whole thing is so dumb. And kids need to know that they cannot be compelled to say either pledge. Texas has basically always wanted to be their own country. That's why, see also, their electrical grid. Texas was its own country, and then decided it didn't want to be one and wanted to be America. Then it changed its mind again and decided it didn't want to be America. Pick a lane. Get rid of the entire pledge. It's super creepy to have children literally pledge their allegiance to the US flag every single day. Yeah, very. Your neighbor to the north has always found this weird. Having to sing the national anthem and Lord's Prayer, Catholic school, was already weird enough. To be honest, a prayer doesn't really stand out at a religious school. Remove it. Stop forcing your religion onto the rest of us, and take it off our money too while you're at it. I think we should remove the pledge altogether. I agree. It's literally indoctrinating and it's creepy as heck. I'm not pledging any allegiance to any government. WTF. Totally. Free countries don't require pledges of allegiance. Authoritarian regimes require pledges of allegiance. I think the entire pledge should go. Forcing young children to pledge blind allegiance to their government is creepy and effed up. It's the kind of thing you would expect from North Korea, not from a supposedly free country. All governments are corrupt and fallible, and none of them are deserving of your unconditional allegiance. Always found it really creepy as someone who's not American. Where I live, we were taught that Germany used to have pledges like that as a way to indoctrinate the populace from a young age. So, when I found out they do that in the US, I was quite shocked. TBH, how are parents even okay with that? I had sort of the same under communism in Eastern Europe. We went 178 years without it. It's unneeded and false. No, not everyone in America is religious. Scary how far down this is. Get rid of it and restore the national motto back to E pluribus unum. Edit, if it's still the motto, let's put it back on our money instead of in God we trust. Edit 2, the official motto of the United States actually is in God we trust. I prefer E pluribus anus, seems more fitting. We're all human beings. Opposed? I advocate for it. It blatantly violates the Establishment Clause. Just because people in favor of the addition say it doesn't specify the Christian God, even though everyone knows that's what it means, doesn't make it any more acceptable. But removing one part of the pledge is the wrong question. The entire pledge is weird and flirts with indoctrinating cult-like bullshit, and we should do away with it entirely. Keep it in. It's worked wonderfully to rid our government of corruption. Because lying, cheating, and stealing are immoral, and deeply religious societies would never do such things. Big, fat, honking S. You really had me for a second. Hey, countries where religion plays the largest role in public policy are also the world's most dysfunctional ones. And no S this time. No, remove it for 2 reasons. 1. We are a secular country. 2. God does not exist. I am not American. My understanding is that the US is an officially secular nation according to the First Amendment. Therefore, there should be no reference to God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Also, the very existence of that pledge has totalitarian overtones to most people living in liberal democracies. So the entire pledge must go. Speaking as a Christian, one can only become Christian by making a free choice to do so. This requires society to be secular. For this reason too, there should be no reference to God in any such pledge. Or Saming. Those darn atheist Russians and their several incredibly famous Orthodox churches. I think it's possible to argue both cases. For the removal, if you want to talk about the secular state, this perspective argues that the Pledge of Allegiance should reflect the principle of separation of church and state. By including one nation under God, they believe the pledge infringes on the secular nature of government and public institutions. And some people argue that the phrase excludes individuals who do not identify with theism or monotheistic beliefs. But in terms of opposing the removal, you can argue on the grounds of historical context, as it can be said the Pledge of Allegiance was added in the 1950s to distinguish the United States from atheist communist countries during the Cold War. Some individuals would also consider the phrase a reflection of the nation's cultural and moral values. And finally, supporters of keeping the phrase might argue that it respects the beliefs of the majority of citizens who identify with a religious faith. They believe that retaining it shows respect for the cultural and religious heritage of the nation. This is an interesting question you put forward. Did ChatGPT write this? I'll go further in that there shouldn't be a Pledge of Allegiance to begin with unless it's attached the oath of enlistment or oath of office. We should not be indoctrinating our kids with nationalism at all, especially Christian nationalism. Love of country must spring from willing hearts and free minds. Justice Hugo Black, West Virginia v. Barnett, 1943. Nope. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Pretty much this. So wouldn't this apply back in 1954 when Congress added it to the pledge? Loyalty pledges are creepy and dystopian. Can the whole thing. I'd remove the entire pledge. Remove the pledge. As a European, it reminds me of the darkest periods in our history. The bubonic plague? Please remove ASAP. We are supposed to be a secular nation. No, America is supposed to have a secular government overseeing a pluralist, multicultural society. It would be great if everyone stopped forcing their religion on other people wherever and however that occurs. Also, why exactly are we taking a loyalty pledge in a democratic nation? How about we ditch the entire pledge and funnel our efforts into teaching comprehensive civics classes in K-12 education? Christians worked hard to convince everyone that this is a Christian-based country, despite it being empirically untrue. Also, at the same time, Christians are somehow the most oppressed and persecuted group in history. In short, yank God out of religion because your imaginary fanfic has no place in the public's life rights. Remove the whole Pledge of Allegiance. It's so cringe, and we as a nation clearly don't believe in it considering the amount of dislike throwing back and forth between liberals and conservatives. Indivisible indeed. Nope. It was shoved in by Christian nationalists in 1954 and we've spent the last 70 years pretending that it's normal. Let's just get rid of the whole thing altogether. Entire pledge. We could just remove the Pledge of Allegiance from things. As an atheist, I would expect it to be removed in a country that supposedly supports a separation of church and state. Not opposed. It's inappropriate in a country that claims church and state should be separate. It was added during a Red Scare, when some people thought we needed to distinguish ourselves from the godless communists. It was added to the pledge as Cold War propaganda. While I wouldn't oppose it being removed, this is Reddit. Responses here are going to have a definite bias, and if you're looking for anything beyond confirmation bias, you won't find it here. Yeah, like asking Reddit this question indicates a fundamental lack of understanding of the user base. Obviously they'll support it, but they're not representative of the country, in large part because nearly half aren't even American. Remove it. It's dumb. We are a nation of many faiths. Our nation was not founded on any religion. We are not a theocracy. Blind nationalism leads to fascism. Never should have been added. Shouldn't be there in the first place. One nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. I would like for us to go back to that line and remove the intrusive "add under God" that interrupts the entire flow of the pledge. Don't see any reason to lose the one nation since that was there from the start. But the under God can take a hike. Sure, people want to cry about how it's best to keep things old school and originalist, and that changing THFON to RSIDAs is unthinkable. Well then it was wrong to add under God by that logic and we don't need it. That's even before any argument that we don't need to promoting or favoring religion in the pledge. Strike it. Just get rid of the darn pledge. America is not supposed to be a cult, and robotically pledging allegiance to a piece of cloth is so effing cringy. We did it in elementary school in the 70s and it was stupid then too. One nation, under stress. God has no place in our schools. Honestly, religion as a whole is effing cancer. But that's another conversation. No, I'm Australian. You know how some people stand around and think to themselves, "Aw shucks, how did the hard-right conservatives co-opt swimming as unifying as the American flag?" Well, little things like having our currency assert the favor of God is one way in which it happened. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it's not something I really care about either. No, because this nation is anything but under God. Not one bit. It wasn't there to begin with, and it has no business being there. Under God wasn't there to begin with. The United States does not have an official religion. To have that phrase in the Pledge of Allegiance doesn't make sense. You're forcing every non-Christian Catholic Jew to accept God or can't pledge allegiance to the United States? No, because it wasn't there to begin with. The Pledge of Allegiance can be removed in its entirety. It's jingoistic culty sh. That garbage should have never become our national motto. The Red Scare is the 50s is the only reason that sh exists today. Keep all archaic fear-based mythology separate from our secular government. Religion is a horrific blight upon humanity. Nah, gotta remove religion from mandatory obligations. I'm religious and even I find it kind of cruel to force it upon those who aren't. Some students were even expelled over it. I am Christian. I support separation of church and state. In preparation to answer this question, I googled why was one nation under God added, and found this. In 1954, in response to the communist threat of the times, President Eisenhower encouraged Congress to add the words under God, creating the 31-word pledge we say today. Bellamy's daughter objected to this alteration. United States founded July 4, 1776. I think it's perfectly fine if we remove this two-word addition. Added 178 years after the nation was founded. 69, nice, years ago. Because it's actually quite simple. My God doesn't need to be pledged to protect us from communists. It doesn't even make sense. Wouldn't it be better to just remove the brainwashing altogether? It wasn't there originally, so take it out. The phrase was added to the pledge in 1954 under President Eisenhower. It's a new thing. It can and should go. I'm fine. The pledge. Singing God Bless America during the 7th inning stretch is an abomination. Thank God I'm a Cubs fan. Kids shouldn't pledge allegiance to a effing flag. It's taking the Lord's name in vain. It's also unconstitutional. We should take in God we trust off our currency. Also, and churches should be taxed unless they can individually prove that they provide a service to the public. It was added in the 1950s as a communist test. No other reason to have it there. Change it to one nation under Canada. Of course not. Government should remain secular, not sectarian. If I'm recalling right, it was added in the World War II to the Cold War era. Or maybe that was in God We Trust. Because the Soviets were atheists. So it was to espouse that we were good and religious. Presuming that to be the opposite of the Soviet position. The problem is, we are a free people. Some are atheists. And among those who believe in God there are those who believe in a Hindu God. Others the Buddha. Then of course the Jesus and Mary Club. If we respect people's individual right to their own beliefs and opinions, then we shouldn't be telling them they trust any God in particular. Although that is their individual right. Their individual right and not an authoritarian government's prescription. For a government to tell its citizens they are under God, is just as disrespectful of their freedom and right to their own beliefs, as telling them there is no God. A government of free people should be and remain neutral and secular on the subject entirely. At my kid's school they say one nation under God, or my kid is just an idiot. Just get rid of the effing pledge. Why do kids need to be indoctrinated into forced patriotism? They're citizens. More importantly, they're just kids. That's it. If they grow up wanting to serve in the military, then that is up to them. Nothing requires an American to love or dislike their country. They just have to not break the law like the last president did. We are not North Korea. It wasn't a thing until the 1950s. It should be removed. Quite frankly, we should do away with the pledge or allegiance. In any other country on earth, children been pressured to ritualistically swear an oath of allegiance to their country and government would be a sign that a fascist regime has come to power. Get rid of the whole thing. A nation needs to earn its people's loyalty. Of course not. That would be ridiculous. We should remove the Pledge of Allegiance entirely. Nope. Ditch it. In fact, ditch the whole thing. The original Pledge of Allegiance was just ad copy to sell flags and got adopted because it was catchy. They added the Under God tripe during the Cold War to place America on the moral high ground over the USSR, but it's just become a bludgeon for the growing Christo-fascist movement of the moral majority onward to claim some kind of ownership over the non-Christian country our government was set up to be. If you need to pledge an allegiance to something, pledge it to the original motto, out of many. 1. It's more uplifting and less jingoistic and culty. I would prefer it be removed because some of us do not practice religion and believe it to be toxic. I'm fine with under God being removed simply because it was only added in the 1950s as propaganda against communism. So it would be restoring the original version.